Hi guys, Clara here, and today we're going to be making some easy clay Halloween charms. Now, I realized I like the look of them without eye pins, but I'll leave some info in the description in case you want to add your own. The first charm we're going to make is a witch's hat. Start off with 2 equal amounts of black clay rolled into balls. With our first ball of clay, we're going to roll that into a cone, and then flatten the base by pressing it against the table. For the second ball of clay, we want to flatten that into a disc. I'm transferring mine onto a piece of parchment paper for easier sculpting. Then I'm attaching the cone into the center of the disc to create our hat. Using 2 sizes of a ball-pointed sculpting tool, I'm blending the 2 pieces together for a seamless finish. Next is to make the belt. Choose whichever color you want, I'm choosing purple, and roll that into a thin log. Then flatten it out to create a long strip. I'm straightening out the edges on mine with a cutting blade. I ended up pressing a little indent all the way around the hat so the belt would sit flatter on the brim. Then you can attach the belt by gently pressing it in place, cutting off the excess, and blending in the seam. And look at your hat at all angles to make sure that the belt looks even all the way around. Finally, I'm adding a belt buckle. Using a small ball of yellow clay, I'm flattening it in between my fingers before cutting into a square. Once I'm happy with the size, I then cut out another square in the center. When you're happy with your buckle, you can peel it off the parchment paper and carefully apply it to your belt. A final optional step is to add a little bit of a bend on top of your witch's hat. And after baking, this is our final product, a perfectly spooky witch's hat. Our next charm is going to be a bubbling cauldron. I'm starting off with a ball of black clay, and I'm flattening that against a piece of parchment paper. I'm using my 2 index fingers to push down against the sides, keeping the top of the ball round. Now we peel the clay off the parchment paper and flip it around. I'm then using several ball-pointed tools to indent the flat surface to create our inner bowl. After some minor adjustments to make sure everything is around, you should be left with a bowl with a flared rim. Next, pick whatever color you want your bubbling stew to be and create a thin disc. Then we'll attach that to the center of our cauldron and smooth out the edges to create an even surface within the bowl. You may need to tap the rim back in place if it gets pushed out. I'm making little indents in the clay for the bubbles to sit in, though I probably should have made these indents bigger. Several bubbles later, and my stew is looking a little bit boring, so I thought I would add a couple eyeballs. And these are simple to make. It's just layering a red dot on top of white, and then a black dot on top of the red. After we add the eyeballs, we can set it off to the oven for 1 hour. Once out of the oven, we now have a delicious witch's stew. Our next charm is going to be just a simple skull. Starting off with the ball of white clay, I'm flattening that into a hockey puck type shape. Then holding it between 2 fingers, I'm squishing the puck together at an angle to create almost a triangular shape. To define the jawbone, have the skull face towards you and pinch the bottom half from the front and the side. So now it should look something like this. And I'm squeezing the jaw even further to create a more pointed shape. And that's the shape of our skull. Now it's just adding details. So I'm just using a ball-pointed tool and creating indents on either side of the face for the eye sockets. A smaller ball-pointed tool to create 2 holes for the nose. Then I'm using a long blade to create the line for the mouth. Then starting from the center of the face, just creating little lines for the teeth, going all the way across for the top and bottom set. If you want, you can stop here, bake it, then paint it, but I'll be adding black clay for the eye sockets and the nose. For added detail on the nose, I'm just dragging the clay up into a upside down teardrop shape. And that's it, your skull is ready to go in the oven for 1 hour. After baking, this is the finished product, and I think it turned out super cute. This next charm is going to be a tombstone. Take a ball of gray clay. I'm just rolling that in between my hands to create a thick log with rounded edges and flatten it out, cutting off the bottom so I have a flat surface. You can texturize your clay to make it look more like stone. You can use a rolled up ball of tinfoil or a toothbrush, preferably an old one. I ended up not liking the tinfoil texture that much, so I only used a toothbrush on the opposite side. For some extra detail, I'm adding a border on both sides of the tombstone, just using a flat-edged sculpting tool. Now you can leave your tombstone blank, but I decided to just do the classic RIP. I'm doing this with a sculpting knife, which creates a very thin line, which I didn't like too much, so I ended up going back and poking in with a toothpick to create bolder lines. Hopefully your tombstone looks something like this. Now for some dirt to place it in, I'm taking a ball of brown clay and rolling that into another log. I'm using tinfoil to add texture, which I thought worked really well for dirt. Now to create a channel for the tombstone to sit in, I'm starting with a small ball-pointed tool before going in with a larger ball-pointed tool to widen it out. And just a little bit of retexturizing with the tinfoil. All that's left is to insert our tombstone into the ground and press in place. Then it's ready to be baked for 1 hour. Once out of the oven, you got yourself a little miniature tombstone. Our final charm is going to be a Jacko Lantern. Start off with a ball of orange clay and slightly flatten it in between your fingers. We'll be drawing lines from the bottom to the top of the pumpkin, from one flat section to another. I started by drawing a line all the way around, splitting my pumpkin in half, but I don't recommend doing this since I feel it looks more like a basketball this way. Then I'm indenting the lines further into the center where I want the stem to poke out. Now to make sure we don't mess up our pumpkin while we draw the face, I'm sticking a toothpick into where the stem will go. That way I don't risk smushing the design as I sculpt. Now you can draw any type of face you want on your pumpkin. I'm just going with the classic triangle eyes and smile. I'm sketching out my design first with a tiny ball-pointed tool before I cut it out, since I don't just want to go willy-nilly, but you can go ahead and go straight to cutting it out if that's what you want. Now I chose to do it this way because if I just tried to make a deep indent in the pumpkin, then all of the clay would be displaced and it would be a lumpy mess. Once the majority of the clay is scooped out, I'm just going back in and smoothing out the rough edges before adding in a little bit of yellow clay. And this way it'll look like your jack-o'-lantern is lit up. Once the yellow clay is added and smoothed out to your liking, we can't forget the top of the pumpkin. We can't have a glowing jack-o'-lantern without a way to get inside. So I'm just cutting out the classic triangle pattern so it looks like we took out all the insides from the pumpkin. Once that's done, all that's left to do is to add the stem. I'm using some brownish greenish clay, rolling that out into a slight cone shape, cutting down to length, and then inserting into the hole created by the toothpick. Press that into place and your jack-o'-lantern is ready for the oven. Once it's baked, you now have your own mini glowing jack-o'-lantern. I think this one turned out really nice. Anyway, that's all the Halloween charms I have for you today. Hopefully you enjoyed. Let me know which charm was your favorite or if there's something you want to see next. But other than that, hopefully you have a great rest of your day and I'll see you guys later. Bye!